You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's REI Marketing Nerds podcast. As always, this is Daniel Barrett here from AdWordsNerds.com. How are you, wonderful people? I hope you are well. This week, I have a really fascinating interview with Greg Dickerson. Now, if you don't know Greg, he's over at gregdickerson.com. He is a real estate developer and investor and coach. He's investing all over the Southeast U.S., North Carolina, into North Virginia, the D.C. area. He started over 12 businesses in his life, and he works with investors all the way from like the very beginning to people doing hundreds of deals a year. The thing I love about this interview and the thing I really like about Greg is that he has a very rational and methodical approach to business. He can come into a business, see where the problems are, strip away all the sort of ridiculousness and get down to brass tacks and just make progress through a certain sort of methodology that he has. It's really fascinating, and he brings a really, really unique take to real estate investing and to business in general. So without further ado, let's get into my interview with Greg Dickerson from gregdickerson.com. All right, I'm here with Greg Dickerson. Greg, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Dan. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I hurt my hip the other day, so my hip is a little sore, which makes me feel 500 years old. But other than that, I'm doing pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Where are you at right now, Greg? Like, where are you located?
Well, right this minute, I am on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I live full-time in Charlottesville, Virginia, but, I invest from, throughout Northeast North Carolina up into the Virginia and Northern Virginia areas, throughout D.C. And so today, specifically, I'm down in the Outer Banks, and I'm helping one of my investors / clients with a short-term vacation rental project. He's purchasing a house, and we're going to gut it and renovate it, and he's going to do Airbnb. So that's like a popular little model, for vacation homes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so wild to me that Airbnb, like even just like 5 years ago, Airbnb almost seemed like an impossibility to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but like, I remember everyone being like, well, someone's going to murder someone in your house. And like, like all this stuff that people said, the reasons why it could work. And now it's like, it's such a mainstream thing. And not only that, but it's this whole other sort of element to real estate investing that wasn't even a thing 5 or 10 years ago. It kind of blows me away.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I guess the idea was if you had an extra bedroom or a room over your garage or a guest house or suite or something, it kind of started out that way. And then it was like, well, if you're going to be gone, and you travel a lot, rent your house out while you're gone. And then, it's turned into a whole investment, vehicle and model. And, especially in resort communities, ski resorts and beach communities and the Outer Banks of North Carolina, I'm sure you're familiar with it. You're in Connecticut. Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Outer Banks of North Carolina is, it's a barrier island off the coast of North Carolina. It's been a summer vacation destination, forever. And it's a very strong rental market, however, it is seasonal, so you've got 16 prime weeks out of the year. The typical season's 26 to 28 weeks that most houses rent, but Airbnb has really expanded that into the shoulder seasons of the spring and the fall, especially with the smaller properties where people, instead of, getting a small hotel room, which are limited down here, not a lot of hotels, it's not like a Virginia Beach or a Myrtle Beach, it's mostly houses. Now they can come down and rent a small house for less than or the same price as a hotel room. And, so it's really expanded the rental pool down here. And a lot of people are, putting their houses in Airbnb. It used to be VRBO. So VRBO, Vacation Rental by Owner, was around before Airbnb down here. And then now Airbnb is just kind of taken off. And, these houses, I mean, I'm looking at a deal today. The guy's going to pay $300,000 for it. We'll probably put 50 in it. to get it just like really shiny and smoking for renters. And it'll do $55,000 a year in rent. I mean, it's you just can't get those kind of numbers anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it completely blows my mind. Let's take a step back, because you're kind of like, you're hitting on a whole bunch of different stuff. And I think it's like, you're sort of a little bit different from, when a lot of the interviews I do, there are people that are just strictly real estate investors, right? But you're in multiple kind of aspects of this industry. So you are an investor in sort of the classical sense, but you're also a real estate developer. You also coach and help real estate investors. So let's kind of take a step back for a second. Tell me, like, how did you get into this space? Like, what got you started in real estate investing or development? Like, how'd you get started?
Yeah. So, I'm natural born entrepreneur, starting as a young kid, cutting grass, raking leaves, doing whatever I could do to make a buck. I'd knock on your door. Hey, Dan, my name's Greg Dickerson. I'm your neighbor. I need money. I'll do anything. What do you need done? So, that was at the, fifth grade, sixth grade.
Yeah, such a good pitch.
Oh, yeah. That was my door-to-door pitch. I just need to make some money. I'll do anything. What do you want me to do? I'll watch your kids, wash your car, rake your whatever, anything. And, that's how I grew up, right? I was fifth grade, sixth grade. So anyways, I worked in restaurants through high school. And, I also was a general laborer on some construction sites. There was a guy doing an addition on a restaurant that I was working in, and he hired me to come clean up after him. So I'm a hard worker, and he liked me. And so I started working with him, when I wasn't in the restaurants at night, working construction during the day, and did that for my senior year of high school. And then went in the Navy right out of high school and did my 4 years, got out of the Navy and got back into construction again during the day and restaurants at night. I was always a two-job guy because, without a college education, your options are limited and were very limited back in, the 80s, when you had to have a college degree to make any kind of a salary. So I was learning, the hard way. And, fast forward to 1997, I moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and I moved here to open a restaurant. I was working as a regional director for a restaurant chain at the time. And, so I had some good management training, some good business training from the restaurants, and moved down to the Outer Banks to open a restaurant. And I got into construction instead. And I started a little remodeling handyman company. In my first year in business, I did $250,000, just me, myself, my truck and tools. And then 7 years later, I was one of the largest builder developers here. We were doing $30 million a year in volume. And I started 12 other companies along the way during that 7-year period, all kind of related to the construction industry, except for one or two. And, and then that's how I got into real estate investing and development. Along the way was I used the profits from the businesses to invest in real estate and to develop real estate. And I started with flipping lots, and then I started building spec houses. Then I did some commercial, and I did some land development subdivisions and things like that. So it all kind of grew from there. And, I made connections and developed relationships with other investors and developers that were coming down to the Outer Banks and buying and building beach houses, and learned from them and, did deals with them and did work for them, built houses for them, remodeled houses for them, and just kind of learned from them. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, man. All right. So there's a whole bunch in there that I really want to ask about. So I've got two questions that are kind of things that pop up to my mind specifically. So for one, I find the whole like restaurant industry connection interesting. So like, was there anything you learned in the restaurant industry that you found ported over to real estate or that helped you in the real estate sort of part of your business life?
Yeah. So the biggest thing was leadership and management, recruiting, interviewing, hiring, training, managing, delegating employees, because I was a manager. So, I had employees underneath of me. So first and foremost, I learned how to be a leader, manager, delegator, and those are my gifts. And that's how I did everything I've done so quickly and so successfully, was being able to do that, to be a leader, to delegate, to motivate and manage others and teach others how to manage and lead. That's the first thing. The second thing was the numbers. So the group that I was with, Lone Star Steakhouses, they were really solid on the numbers. And I mean, you learned how to squeeze a nickel out of a penny. And that's what the restaurant business is all about. Very thin margins. It's all about volume. And I mean, you got to watch everything. And so our KPIs in the restaurant industry, it wasn't called KPIs. It was just your numbers. We just referred to it as the numbers, which in the real estate industry is KPIs. So we broke it down to like labor in the kitchen. Okay. Labor in the restaurant. Labor is your biggest expense in a restaurant behind food. So you have to control that. So we would do labor matrices. So we'd say, you're going to do $30,000 this week in business. You can spend $5,000 in the kitchen on labor. So you had to break that down by the hour and write your schedule based on, the average dollar per hour and number of people that you had and hours available. So just like in the real estate business where you break it down, so many, dollars spent to generate so many leads, to generate so many appointments, to generate so many deals, breaking your KPIs down and all that. We did the same thing with food, with labor. And we broke our food down by each category of food, seafood, steak, chicken, pork, cheese, this, that, and the other. Yeah. And we did inventory on a weekly basis, and we would go back and track our usage to our sales so that you knew, hey, if we did the same sales this week as we did last week, but we used twice as much cheese, why? Did we sell more something that required more cheese, or are we just wasting, or is there theft? What's going on? So I really learned how to track and run the business by the numbers, which takes all the guesswork out of everything. So those are the two major components I learned from a business standpoint in the restaurant. The other things you learn is how to operate under pressure, how to deal with people, how to interact with people, sales, customer service, hospitality, all those types of things as well. Multitasking, is huge. But at the end of the day, leadership and management by numbers, running a business by the numbers are the two biggest takeaways from the restaurant industry that translated extremely well into the real estate and construction and development world.
That's awesome. It's the same with me. It's the thing I love about marketing is your ability to go back through a line of metrics and say, like, where are we falling off and why? So when you when you're hiring, are you primarily looking for a skill set, or are you looking for someone that has a certain set of like personality traits? I've gone back and forth. Like my own business, I tend to just hire people who have personalities that I'm looking for, because I'm always like, I can train you to do the actual thing. And sometimes that's been great, and sometimes, it's probably suboptimal. How do you think about that problem? Or is it not necessarily one or the other?
Well, it can be. So, a lot of times the adage is, hire the attitude, not the skill. And in a general business where you don't need a specific skill set that's not super technical, where pretty much everything can be trained, then you hire the individual, right? You hire the attitude, you hire the individual, not necessarily the experience. And I've found a lot of times, especially not so much in the restaurant industry, but in the construction industry, you do need people that have experience and skills and an understanding. When you're doing high level projects, you can't hire just anybody that has a good attitude. They got to know construction. They got to know what they're doing, to build $1 million house or to build a, $5 million commercial building, or to do site work and development. You can't just train that, in a week or two or a month. In the restaurant business, almost any position in the restaurant can be trained very quickly. So it's more about attitude. It's more about an individual that's willing to take initiative and is willing to learn. You can train that and then cross-train that. And that's how I came up in the restaurant industry. I started as a busboy dishwasher, and I was moved into management very quickly because I had the right attitude, the right work ethic. I had no clue what I was doing, but they trained me. And, that works. In your business, you could probably do the same thing. There are some technical aspects and experience that you need, but pretty much everything in a marketing, especially digital marketing, business, that can be learned and trained. And, you're not coding, right? You're not writing computer code. You're not, developing software. You're learning things that can be taught. So it all depends on the job. If you need an engineer, well, you got to have an engineer with experience in education. And going back to that, I've hired a lot of people in my career that had tremendous experience, but poor attitudes, and they didn't do well, and they didn't last long. And, and I had people that had less than equivalent experience, but great attitudes, and they did extremely well, even though they weren't quite there, but they had enough technical knowledge to where I could take them to the next level. So I'm all about hiring the right attitude over the experience all day long.
Yeah. The other question I had for you almost immediately was, so just to go back to this. So you said you started 12 different companies, right? So how many of those were like at the same time? You know what I mean? Like, are you starting one and selling it and moving on? Or do you have like multiple businesses at a single time?
Yeah, I had at one time probably 7 or 8 all at the same time. And what I do and the way I did it was I would find great operators and partner with them So my first company was a plumbing company. So I had a remodeling business. When I first started out, we did nothing but remodeling, and I was having trouble getting trades contractors to do my work because they were small jobs. So one of my plumbing companies it was just him, and he had 2 trucks and he had a helper, and he was struggling, and he was about to go bankrupt and leave town. So he's a great guy, good plumber, poor businessman. So I said, I tell you what, I'll buy your company. I'll pay off all your debts. You run it. I'll coach you. I'll put an office manager in place. We'll grow your business. You do all my work. And, then we'll grow the business beyond my company. So that's what we did. I bought him, paid off his debts, put an office manager in place, got him an office warehouse. Actually, he shared mine at the time. I was still in my office warehouse at the time, my first facility. And I went out and bought 6 trucks. There was another plumbing company that was going out of business. We hired all their mechanics. Instantly, overnight, literally overnight, he went from 2 trucks to 8, became the largest plumbing outfit in the area. And, I'm a guerrilla marketer. So I've got a marketing, that's the other thing from the restaurants that I took away. Plus, I'm very self-educated. I didn't go to college, but I educated myself. One of the first books I ever read on marketing was guerrilla marketing. So back then, everything was offline. There was no online marketing. So, I lettered up the trucks, put full page ads in the phone book, and then we blew him up and turned him into the largest plumbing outfit on the beach at the time. And a very small community. So when you do something like that, it looks like you're everywhere and you look huge. And, so I knew how to do that. So that was one. I had my construction company at the same time. Then I added a real estate arm to the construction company, separate business. Then I did an electrical company. Then I did a storm shutter company. I did a painting company. I did a pool spa landscaping company. So I had all of those and some restaurants all at the same time. Then I did a gymnastics, cheerleading, trampoline school, another situation where, I was high profile and I did a lot of stuff in youth sports. My kids were growing up, so I coached every sport they were in, and I had a passion for kids and youth sports. And we didn't have a gymnastics program around here beyond Parks and Recs that after 5 years, you might be able to do a cartwheel, right? So there was this guy that called me up, and we met because I was on the board of Babe Ruth softball. And he said, man, I got this business and I'm struggling. I got 70 kids in this program, and you need to come check it out. I need help. I need to move into a bigger facility and grow this thing. So I went and checked it out, and it was high quality. I mean, this dude was a junior Olympic level coach. He had cheerleaders in there doing like high level stuff. And he had this trampoline program that I had no idea that there was a competitive trampoline thing, right? So fantastic coach, great operator, poor businessman. So I bought the program. I went and leased up a 10,000 square foot space. He was in like a 2,000 square foot space, and built it out, turned it into a gymnasium. And we're in a very small community of 30,000 people. I took him from 70 kids to 350 in less than 6 months. And that was at the same time I had all of the other businesses. So we just blew that program up, and then I ended up taking it, turning it nonprofit and all that, but, donated everything to the company. So, so that was another one.
Want to find motivated seller leads online, but don't know where to start? Download our free Motivated Seller Keyword Report today. AdWords nerds have spent over $5 million this year researching the most profitable keywords for finding motivated seller leads. And you can grab these exact keywords when you download our report at www.adwordsnerds.com/keywords.
I mean, so would you say like your primary skill set is really you're bringing the systems and the marketing to people that are already good at what they do. They lack that kind of centralized business skill set?
And the business oversight, yes. So the business intelligence and sophistication, leadership, number one, leadership, management, delegation, systems, business operations, knowledge of the numbers and how a business runs, because a business is a business, right? It's all about the numbers. So I don't care what business you're in, it's all about the numbers in terms of the operations of the business and the financial strength of the business. Then beyond that, it's got its nuances and languages and, tricks and trades and all that. Mm-hmm. The marketing is marketing, right? So you have marketing, you have advertising. A lot of people don't understand the difference between the two. And you have branding. So, understanding what those things are and bringing that expertise to the table. But more importantly than anything else, just being a coach and a mentor, and that's what I did. I found great operators and I coached them to success, and I taught them what I did. And what I learned is you have a business, you automate that business, you grow it, scale it, automate it, and you take the profits from that business and you invest it in other assets that are going to pay you for the rest of your life. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the first books I read when I launched this company in 1997. And a lot of people got real estate out of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. What I got out of Rich Dad, Poor Dad was business. Create businesses that provide cash flow to invest in other assets. That's what was my takeaway from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's why I did all those different businesses, just like Rich Dad did. When you read the book, he had all these different companies and he invested in real estate.
Yeah.
So I just did what the book said.
The whole idea of like snowballing all those things together, that's like really powerful once you figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah. So it was real easy. So if you're good at what you do, I would come alongside of you. And again, it was somebody who approached me. Somebody came to me and said, hey, they either already had a business and they needed help getting to the next level or just staying alive. And I saw something in them that I knew they had the potential. So I came along with them and I'd partner with them. And I didn't work one day in any of those businesses, never set foot in the operations of those businesses. I did it just like we're doing right now, in the car, on the phone, in the office, on the phone, coaching them, leading them, and teaching them how to be leaders, delegators, motivators, managers, and how to run, their business and scale their business. So I did it all through them, and they just did what I told them to do. They just went out, executed, and made it happen.
So you are currently developing real estate. You're also investing in real estate and working with investors. So you're Correct. Kind of touching a lot of different parts of the market. I'm curious, like what you see or feel about the housing market, specifically for investors that we're in right now. I've told this story like a couple times, but last time I was in a room with a lot of bigger investors, people doing a significant volume of deals. I felt a lot of anxiety about 2019 and 2020 and kind of what that was going to bring. Maybe not anxiety, but just the sense that things were tightening up and it was going to get harder for investors to find deals. What's your take on that? Both from an investor yourself, but also dealing with students who are, probably at an earlier place in their investing careers than you are.
Yeah, and I've got both. So I've got some clients that are, in that 10 to 20 deal a year range, and I've got some guys that are in the 200 to 300 deal range, that I coach and work with. So yeah, everybody is concerned about where things are headed. It's getting harder and harder to find deals because there's more people getting in the game. You have the iHouse buyers, the real estate market is changing. More realtors are waking up and becoming more savvy at, doing what investors are doing because, they are competing with each other. So that is something that's affecting the market. Prices are inflated. Interest rates are cheap. So that's putting, pressure on pricing. So it's getting harder to find good deals that make sense. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of new investors getting in the game that are overpaying from wholesalers for flips. So it depends on which end of the business you're in, if you're wholesaling, if you're flipping. And so yeah, it's getting difficult, but it's like anything else. It all has its cycles. There's always opportunity. The key is consistency, knowing your business, knowing your numbers and sticking with it. But it is getting more and more difficult to find better deals. And what we've seen is on the wholesale side, we've seen the wholesale fees climb to really huge levels. And then what's going to happen ultimately is that those wholesale fees are just going to get reduced. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, to stay competitive, to stay in business, keep going, it's going to get back to that $5,000 to $10,000 wholesale fee on most projects because, it's not sustainable to generate a $20,000 wholesale fee on a $50,000 or $70,000 house. That's just not sustainable. Those mm-hmm. investors are buying those houses. They're not making money and they're not going to go back and do more. So you're going to run out of a buyer pool at some point. So it's just a matter of evolving and, changing your business model and just staying current with what's happening out there.
When you talk to investors that are worried about the whole kind of venture-backed iBuyer, whether that's Open Door or Zillow Instant Offers, all these kind of big venture-backed companies trying to disrupt the what we would think of as the investing space, but I think a lot of people just think of as the real estate space in general. What do you say to them? Like, how do you see the investor, the kind of individual investor or the investor with a small team fitting into that new ecosystem? Do you think those companies are here to stay, or is it just kind of like them, they're floating along on a lot of investor money themselves? I don't know. Where do you see all that going?
Yeah, they're not making any money. So those companies are buying a database is really what they're doing. And, they are not profitable. They're not making money. Zillow Offers has lost money. iHouse Buyers has lost money. Open Door is a loss leader. So they are looking at themselves as early stage tech startup where you don't make any money for a certain period, but you build this huge following, right? So, the other thing too is that they're very inefficient and they're very linear. Okay. So they have one thing and one thing only to offer you. And if it doesn't, and most of the time their offers aren't great. So, and they're paying close to retail, but not quite retail. So if they're competing with realtors, which is really what they're really after competing with that real estate, agent space. They're not really after the real estate investor because they're not able to be or become a transaction engineer. So what I would tell investors is at whatever level you're at, if you're not already, you've got to become a transaction engineer in order to stay relevant, meaning you got to have more than one solution for your homeowner, right? For your seller. And if you're truly out there to serve people and to try to solve problems, which is what real estate investors are supposed to be doing on the residential level, solving a motivated seller, a distressed seller's problem, then you got to be able to offer them a number of solutions. One is I can buy your house for cash and legitimately be able to take that thing down and close. Number two, if that doesn't work for you, then maybe we can do a rent to own or a lease option. Number three, if that doesn't work for you, I know a realtor who can list and get this house sold for you, or I'm a realtor myself. So those are some of the options as a wholesaler that you've got to be able to, or as a real estate investor, you got to be able to offer that seller and being a transactional engineer that these other companies aren't, they can't be, and they never will be, and they are inefficient. So I think that's where investors are going to have the advantage is that they got to be, more personal, more, relational and more transactional based to where they've got a number of solutions for people.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely huge. And I think you really nailed it in the sense that these companies cannot replace that human element of that transaction. And it's such a big part of what investors do. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with those companies. They're definitely kicking up a lot of dust. So it'll be when it settles, it'll be interesting to see what everything looks like. Now, we didn't really talk about this beforehand. And I wasn't really sure I was going to bring it up, but I wanted to ask you about your coaching program specifically, because the thing that makes you and what you do interesting to me is you have a very varied background. Right? I think a lot of people in the real estate investing coaching space specifically, they have done one thing and they may be really successful and they kind of teach the thing that worked for them. Right? So it's I always say, someone's I'm going to show you how to win the lottery and I'm going to do that by giving you my winning lottery number, right? Which is
yeah, cool.
And it worked for them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that number is going to work for you. But you have done this a lot of different times. You've been in the business space. You've been in a lot of different parts of the industry. And I think that gives you a really interesting background. So if I'm looking to get into real estate investing or I'm an investor and I'm early or, whatever, what does your coaching process look like? If I want to work with you, what does it look like? What do you help me do? How do we work together? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's one-on-one and we look at what you're already doing. So if you're already in a business, we're doing something, then we help you, come in and help you scale that, grow it, and then automate it so that you can do some other things, take the profits and invest in other assets. Because again, if you're wholesaling or flipping, that's transactional and it's one at a time, right? You could do 100 a year, 200 a year, whatever, but it's still one transaction at a time, however many you're doing in a year. So that's going to be affected with economic market cycles. So you've got to have, passive income coming in from somewhere. When I say passive, you've got to manage the assets that you own. So passive income can be a business. It can be real estate. It can be, any number of things. It can be financial instruments, whatever it is, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You need other income coming in. You need multiple streams, in case of an economic event, to hedge a downturn in your residential flipping business. So I just come alongside of people where they are, whatever business it is. And I work with people in business as well, not just real estate. I've got software companies, I've got construction companies, I've got retail businesses, restaurants, any number of things. And so I was geographically limited. So I was wide in my asset base and the strategies that I used, right? So that's one way to look at it. If you're geographically limited, then you you expand your asset base and you expand the types of investments and opportunities you get into. If you're narrowly focused on one technique or one asset class, then you can go big with your market. You're going to have to go big with your market. So I just look at where people are, and what I help them do is grow and scale, automate, and systemize the business they're already in. I go in, find the roadblocks, find the barriers, and help remove those so that we can instantly and quickly grow that business. And then I help them automate it, put it on autopilot, so that they can take those profits and reinvest into other vehicles, whether it's continuing to grow and expand the business or get into another business or get into some real estate assets that are going to pay them over time. So it all depends on where they're at. If it's somebody just starting out, I tell them, look, let's look at some things, study some things. Usually somebody has some idea of what they're interested in, whether it's wholesaling, fix and flip on the real estate side, single family rentals. One strategy isn't the best strategy for everybody, right? Some people are more bent towards commercial and multifamily. Some are more bent towards development. Some would want to flip houses, whatever it is. I don't tell anybody you should do this or you should do that. What I say is whatever you're called to, whatever you feel like fits your personality and what you're drawn to right now, let's do that. Let's grow it, scale it, automate it. So then you can explore other options and opportunities once this thing's on autopilot. So that's really what I do, regardless of what asset class you're in, what, investment strategy you're using, whatever market you're in, or whatever business you're in. That's really what I do. And it is really cool that, this is 23 years down the road for me, and developing myself every single day as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as an individual. I pour into myself every single day. I've got mentors and people that I work with at some very high levels. And I've got people at the $1 billion level that I work with that mentor me. And, and I work with some of the top people in the industry. So what's really cool is when I work with people, they're getting the benefit of all of that through me, just like books, right? If you read 1,000 books, then you're getting the benefit of every book that those 1,000 authors wrote. So you're literally reading millions of books when you read 1,000 books or 100 books, because you're getting everything that they've ever learned, everything that they've ever read, that they compiled into that book. Same thing with me. Everything that I do with the guys that are flipping 300 houses a year, 200 houses a year, the apartment investors that have an $800 million to $1 billion portfolio, to the software company that's doing whatever he's doing, all of that translates through to the individual I'm working with, so that they know what's working out there right now, what strategies, what techniques, what marketing methods. And there is no secret method. There is no secret list. There is no secret anything. What there is discipline, consistency, knowing your numbers, finding a niche, getting it going, automate it, systemize it, grow it, scale it before you do anything else. Focus is 100% of the game. Pick something. Let's pick something. Let's go with it. Let's grow it, scale it, automate it, and then, expand from there.
Yeah, I love it, man. I just think like the ability to look across all those different businesses and all those different experiences, I think that's really unique in this space. And I think that's awesome. So if people want to come and check you out, how can they find out more about what you do and look up everything there is to know about you?
Yeah, so gregdickerson.com. All my information's on there, contact info, social media profiles, YouTube and Facebook and everything. So gregdickerson.com. It's got all my information there. And the other thing is I'm in it. So I'm developing, I'm doing single family, I'm flipping, I'm developing properties, I'm doing multifamily. So I'm in it every day, just like my clients are. And I'm always looking for business opportunities as well, that I get into. I do equity capital, and I look for companies that have the ability to scale, and I'll come in as the intellectual capital. I can raise capital as well, if it's required and appropriate for the business that we're looking at and needed. And, so yeah, it's, I'm in it in the trenches doing what I'm telling other people to do all day, every day.
Awesome. Yeah. So everybody, in case you're listening to this, I'll put some links to Greg's stuff in the show notes as well, which you can get to at adwordsnerds.com/podcast. Greg, thank you so much, man. This was super fascinating and awesome. And I had a great time. And I really appreciate you taking the time and talking to me and the REI Marketing Nerds folks. It's awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Cheers, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Yep. You as well.
That is it. That's it for our interview this week. I hope you had a great time. I really did. I really was really interested in Greg's approach, and talking to him really made me want to sit down and get back into my own numbers. So I hope it did the same to you. As always, if you are not in our free Facebook group, I don't know what's wrong with you. At this point, I've said it to you so many times, it's really on you. You should totally get in there. It's the REI Marketing Nerds Facebook group. You can find us by going on Facebook and just typing in REI Marketing Nerds, or you can go to adwordsnerds.com/group. That's ADWORDS nerds.com/group. It's totally free. I'm in there posting every single day, posting awesome stuff. We do free trainings, Facebook Lives, all sorts of cool stuff. So make sure you get in there. And thank you, as always. If you are enjoying this podcast, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening. And I will see you next week. Till then, have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.